All right, so I go first. Kang's got a six-pack of NFL questions. Let's go.
All right, guys, here we go. The NFL announced this week that the Philadelphia Eagles, would be one of the designated teams to play in Brazil in 2024. It's going to be week 1 on a Friday night. Are you okay with all of this, any of this, none of this?
I'm okay with it because it doesn't really impact me. Occasionally your team is going to lose a home game to go play in Europe occasionally, but it really doesn't have that great of an impact on me. And in fact, sometimes I kind of like those early morning Sunday games and enjoy watching them. But what I really think the league needs to look at its own reputation. When they're doing this, it's a money grab for them. They're making huge amounts of money in marketing and all this. Why don't they ever make it worth our while? And I don't mean cut ticket prices, but it wouldn't kill them to take a fan, like a plane load full of season ticket holders to some of these exotic locales. Say we're going to have a raffle and we're going to take a plane load of Philly fans or Lions fans or whomever to one of these games. Just a little bit of give back for taking a game away from a home site. And I realize people don't love, hey, I'll never win, but it's better than nothing. And out of these deals, we get nothing.
I find it strange you're going to start the season like this, but I think better that than a few weeks into the season so teams get acclimated and all that. I think it's a 3-hour time difference in Brazil from where it is now. So I don't know if they would start games earlier or not, or if they just, throw that as part of the 1 o'clock schedule. It seems like it would work just fine like that. I'm not a big fan of the international game. It's more about forcing it into Europe than it is about other places. I like the games that are played in Mexico City. I think it'd be fun to play games in Canada. And South America is a different area to conquer. Brazil is obviously exotic and totally unique, and it's different, and I'm here for it.
Well, if I disagree. I don't think they're just trying to force it on Europe. They're trying to force it around the world. I mean, this is Brazil.
Clearly, but earlier they were.
This is everywhere. This Roger Goodell and the owners, they want this to be a complete global sport. If I'm really being honest, I'm not cool with any of it. I understand it, but personally, I'm not cool with any of it. I understand the globalization because they see basketball and they want everyone in the world to care about football and the Super Bowl. I also don't like the Friday night thing. You're taking away from high school football. I think that sucks. I've said this for a long time, guys. You guys know this. The NFL is going to be every day during the week at some point. They're just going to take over our TVs because it doesn't matter when it's on. It's the number 1 rated show. And so if I'm being completely honest, I don't like any of it, but I do understand all of it because the NFL is just all about making money, and that's all they care about. All right, if the Bears do trade the first overall pick, what team absolutely needs to move up and make this deal?
It's a great question, and I think you have to start to go back a little bit further in the draft because there's a lot of really good quarterbacks available in this draft. I know everybody likes Caleb Williams. I like Jaden Daniels a lot. There's a Drake May people out there, and then you've got the whole Michael Penix, Bo Nix, J.J. McCarthy thing. But if you want to get to number 1, it means you want to leapfrog some teams to get there. And I think the number 1 team that needs to do that is Atlanta. They're down there at 8. They're not going anywhere with Desmond Ridder. They need a quarterback. And if they want to develop a young quarterback to go with the young core players they have, they've got to jump from 8 to 1 because these other teams in front of them are dying to get their quarterbacks. And if they want one, if they want the high caliber one that they can't miss, if they think the number 1 pick in the draft is can't miss, then go get it.
To be clear here, I think it's a great draft if you want a quarterback to not have to trade up. I don't know that anybody needs to. I mean, I look at teams that could get a developmental guy like the Jets at 10, the Saints at 14, the Colts not the Colts, the Seahawks at 16. But I guess if you really are going to get aggressive, it would be New England at 3 to try and get one of the top 2 guys that seem to be rated a little bit higher than anybody else. But honestly, if I were New England, I'd be looking to try to trade back and get a Penix or a Jaden Daniels or Bo Nix or JJ.
Yeah, I guess we just have different evaluations, me and you guys, on Caleb Williams. I think he's clearly the best prospect in this draft. There's no for sure things whatsoever. Drake May, Bo Nix, many of those guys may end up being better than Caleb Williams. But as of right now, the skill set that Caleb Williams presents, it's just too much to pass up for a team like the Raiders. I would sell my entire draft if I were the Raiders and go up and get Caleb Williams. They already have Devontae Adams. Antonio Pierce has that team believing in itself. Max Crosby on defense. I think he'd be a huge difference maker for the Raiders. I'd sell, and that's something that I honestly think Mark Davis might actually entertain. And they're moving from 13, so it's going to take a ton in future draft picks, but I choose the Raiders. All right, should the Super Bowl always be, speaking of the Raiders, in Las Vegas?
It's too early to say that. But there was a story yesterday about some of the things that the NFL is emphasizing. Like the NFL has banned the Chiefs and 49ers from any gambling whatsoever while in Vegas, right? And that's not just on football. That's any gambling whatsoever. I will watch this one closely to see if everyone complies. Also, NFL players are not allowed to bet on the game, and a lot of them go to the Super Bowl. And again, I will see if they comply. But keep an eye on that storyline because I'm sure somebody's going to screw it up. And in the meantime, you know, the owners would never go for that. Like they have a chance. Wait, I build a new stadium, I get a Super Bowl, right? I mean, that tends to be the formula in the NFL. So, no, I don't think it should always be in Vegas.
No, it definitely shouldn't always be in Vegas, but Vegas deserves to be a part of the rotation, I think. It's a beautiful stadium. It's a destination where everybody wants to go. And I think maybe you can start to not phase out, but stop going every 4 years to New Orleans, for instance. I mean, New Orleans we went there for a Super Bowl with San Francisco and Baltimore. It was a great experience, but that stadium's not great. And I think it's time to start backing away from a place like New Orleans, and let's throw more Vegas in the mix.
Well, you're not going to like next year's Super Bowl because it's in New Orleans.
I know.
But the big part of me says, yes, it should be in Las Vegas. I mean, I think it'd be kind of cool. Everyone knows Vegas is the spot for the Super Bowl. Like you said, Gator, it's a destination point for anything and everything, not just sports, but just all of entertainment. But in the end, I do like moving it around, just around the country, letting other people see what the Super Bowl is all about. I do think, though, that Las Vegas should always be the backup, and they should always be prepared in case something goes down. Vegas is ready. All right. Who's more important for the Kansas City Chiefs to bring back next year? Chris Jones or L'Jarius Sneed?
Tough question. You got the whole question, does the defensive line make the secondary better? Does the secondary make the defensive line better? They're both really good players, but I think it's Chris Jones. He's just been consistently great. Had 10.5 more sacks this year. Obviously is a difference maker up front, 13 tackles for loss. They didn't have him to start the season, and they paid for it. I think it's Chris Jones.
So great DT versus a great cornerback. They're both hugely valuable, both in their primes. The franchise tag number for those positions are actually right next to each other. They're relatively close. That tells you about their perceived value in the league. Kansas City's defense is second in sacks in each of the last 2 years, led in large part by Jones. But they're near the bottom in interceptions. So I'm just going to split hairs and say because of that, feels to me like Jones is maybe the more important of the two. But that's the best argument I can make.
Yeah, both are really good players, obviously, for this team. The Chiefs have become a defensive team. For those that haven't paid attention, Mahomes and Kelsey are great on offense, but this is a defensive team right now moving forward, and it's because of these two guys. I bring back Chris Jones. My tiebreaker is he is a guy that's just so respected in that locker room. He's kind of the heart and soul of that defense and maybe even that team, some would say. I trust him to be good longer than Sneed. You mentioned the cap number is pretty similar. So, like I said, the tiebreaker for me is Chris Jones, captain. The guys really respect him. And pressure from up the middle is hard to find in this league, and he's consistent at doing that. All right, sticking with the Chiefs and the Super Bowl here. Is the pressure more on Patrick Mahomes to win his third ring or Kyle Shanahan to win his first ring?
So I'm going to go Shanahan. He was the OC in Atlanta when they blew that 25-point lead, and obviously the head coach in San Francisco when the 49ers blew a 10-point lead to Kansas City. He has come close, and I think if it happens again, people are going to start pointing the finger at him a little bit, whereas if Mahomes doesn't win this game, I think it'll just be argued that they lost to a better team, given that San Francisco is the favorite. So I'm going to go that Kyle Shanahan needs it more than Patrick Mahomes.
I think it's definitely Kyle Shanahan. He hasn't won it yet, and Mahomes has got 2 under his belt. He's been to 3. Here he is for his 4th. It's all about personal legacy at this point, and I don't think he puts that pressure on himself. He wants to win it for his team. He's a team-oriented guy, but Shanahan hasn't gotten it done. And Doug mentioned the 2 big failures that he's had when he's gotten there. Yeah, it's clearly on Shanahan.
Yeah, there's pressure on Mahomes because he is playing for legacy, and he wants people keep bringing up Brady to him, and he knows he's far away from that. But to get even in that conversation, he's got to win a 3rd. But yeah, the more pressure, I agree with you guys, is on Kyle Shanahan. I think they've done a lot over there with the Niners. They pretty much do whatever Kyle Shanahan asked them to do. I mean, go up and trade for Trey Lance, and then oh, by the way, that didn't work out, and he made it work with Purdy. So obviously he's a good head coach, offensive coordinator, all that, but he needs to win one to cement that. And winning just 1 ring in this league just buys you so much credibility.
Sure does.
It's crazy. Brett, Aaron Rodgers only has 1. Drew Brees only has 1. I mean, but those guys are held really high. All right, Patrick Mahomes has had to address this week. People are asking, are the Chiefs the new villains of the NFL? What do you guys think?
I mean, all this data will show you that the Chiefs are, that people don't like the Chiefs. And I think there's a large part is the whole Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift thing, which I think is ridiculous. And maybe it's just as soon as if they break up that, okay, they don't hate him anymore. And I think that's dumb. I mean, I'm going to go personally, who it is for me. And for me, I think it's easier to pick on the Jets than it is the Chiefs. Aaron Rodgers, he sets himself up just when you think, okay, Aaron Rodgers is not that bad of a guy. He opens up his mouth again and does something and says something stupid and puts himself right back in the front. And I'm here for it all the time when anybody wants to speak ill of Aaron Rodgers, because I want to be convinced that he's not the guy that I actually start to like every few months. So I don't think it's the Chiefs.
You mentioned the data, the Twitter, that they had the most negative comments measured on Twitter and were ranked as the most hated team in the NFL, the Chiefs, that is. And you start laundry listing the things that annoy people, fairly or unfairly, but it's Taylor Swift, it's Brittany Mahomes, it's Pat Sr. and another DUI, it's Jackson Mahomes, it's their play-by-play guy telling, in the call in the final game of the AFC Championship game that America needs to deal with the Chiefs, which actually rubbed me the wrong way. They have a bunch of characteristics of people that annoy people, but they're not my most hated team. And in fact, they're kind of my hero team on Sunday. So I don't think they might be, and they probably are, but not for me.
Yeah, I think some people think like, oh, is it Chiefs fatigue? But I think it's all the outside stuff. Like you mentioned, it's the dating, the Kelce versus Rodgers even, it's everything outside. Unfortunately, I think that has made them annoying to a lot of people. So I think they are the new villains of the NFL, but I agree they're not my personal villain, but I think they are the NFL's villain now.
And that concludes the Wide 9 Omaha 4-down around the league blitz thingy. One of the questions in there I want to address a little bit further and get the listener's opinion. We'll get to that today at 10:50. It's Carson Anderson, 97.1 The Ticket.